miles an hour. A yellow warning extending further south into Wales, the Midlands and East Anglia. Travel disruption, likelihood of damage to trees. Power interruptions also possible, particularly in that amber area. So a blustery Wednesday evening as that storm system moves through. The winds steadily easing through the night so that by Thursday, Dudley's out the way. It'll still be a blustery day with sunshine and showers. But here comes the next storm. This is Storm Eunice arriving on Friday. Still some uncertainty about the track and location, but some strong wind from that storm more likely across the southern half of the UK.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello and welcome to Headliners. My name is Dominic Frisby and this is the show in which comedians read the papers so you don't have to. Tonight we'll be discussing Prince Andrew, or as he was once known, Randy Andy, the unlikely and alarming cannibalism amongst Mexican drug cartels, and we feature the Ukrainian granny who is standing up to Putin. But first we go to Polly Middlehurst for the news.
Thanks, Dominic. Your top stories tonight. Royal experts say Prince Andrew is unlikely to return to royal life after settling a civil sex abuse case against him in the United States. The Duke of York has agreed to donate a substantial sum of money to Virginia Giuffre's charity. Prince Andrew will also demonstrate his regret for his association with the convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Lawyer Lisa Bloom, who represents 8 victims of Epstein, welcomed the settlement as a victory for Miss Giuffre.
She was able to accomplish what nobody else has. That is to get Prince Andrew to stand squarely with victims of sex trafficking and sexual abuse, to make a significant contribution to her charity, which will help other victims in cases that don't get media coverage, where celebrities aren't involved, but where many women are still suffering.
Lisa Bloom. Well, the US President Joe Biden says an imminent Russian attack on Ukraine is still a possibility. That comes after Russia failed to send a representative to European peace talks. Boris Johnson says the Kremlin is sending mixed signals to Moscow, insisting it's pulling some troops back from the Ukrainian border. NATO says, though, there's no evidence that that is actually happening. President Biden is urging Russia now to engage in talks with the West.
The United States has put on the table concrete ideas to establish a security environment in Europe. We're proposing new arms control measures, new transparency measures, new strategic stability measures, These measures would apply to all parties, NATO and Russia alike.
President Joe Biden. Now, in Wales, all children aged between 5 and 11 are going to be offered the COVID jab. The Welsh Government says it's taken the decision after reading the yet-to-be-published report from the Joint Committee on Vaccination and Immunisation. The JCVI has already given the go-ahead to vaccinate at-risk 5 to 11-year-olds. Meanwhile, research by the UK Health Security Agency shows people who are vaccinated are less likely to be affected by long COVID. It found 2 doses of Pfizer, AstraZeneca or Moderna or the single-shot Johnson & Johnson jab cut the risk of developing lasting symptoms by around half. And lastly, the husband of a woman killed on a film set in the United States has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the actor Alec Baldwin. Cinematographer Helena Hutchins died last October after a prop gun Mr. Baldwin was holding went off during a rehearsal for a movie in New Mexico. Alec Baldwin claims he did not pull the trigger. Helena's family lawyer is Brian Parnish.
A young boy who will never have a mother, and it's a man who lost his wife, who he had a long-term great marriage with. So we need to have them be fully compensated.
Brian Parnish. On TV, online and on your radio via DAB+, you're with GB News. Now time for headliners.
Thank you, Polly. Welcome everyone to Headliners. I'm Dominic Frisby. I'm your host. And so we meet tonight's guests. We have Andrew Doyle, the Florence Nightingale of free speech.
Who came up with that?
Me.
Right,
I
okay.
came up with that in Marks and Spencer.
Don't know quite what it means.
It doesn't. Well, it sort of means you're a champion of it, but in a sort of Florence Nightingale kind of way.
Okay, fair enough.
It's you can read into it what you like. That's the beauty of the line.
It's very cryptic.
It is very cryptic. Well, if you thought this was cryptic, wait till you hear the next one. We have Judaism's answer to Perry Groves. Ian Stone, there we go.
Hello.
Hello.
He ran that by me beforehand, didn't he?
I'm sure he did.
He said, what do you think? I said, I don't know what it means. I have no idea what it means.
No.
I do like Perry Groves, though.
I ran them by... Well, Perry Groves is a hero. Do you know who Perry Groves is,
I don't
Andrew?
know who Perry Groves is.
He was a hard-running, red-headed Arsenal player who ran harder than he achieved. Would that be fair enough to say?
I think that's fair enough. He once got brought on in a cup final at Wembley on a really hot day, but about the last 10-yard strip on the pitch was in shade, and he spent the whole game running up and down there, and the manager going, I know what you're doing. That's Perry Groves.
Oh, I see.
Very good. Right, that is the mildly amusing introductory banter out of the way. Let's have a look through tomorrow's headlines.
We didn't have a lot to work with.
And I wasn't judging you, I was just reporting. Anyway, and I think we know what most of these headlines are going to be about, and we start with the Mail. And the Mail goes with Duke's final £10 million humiliation. The Telegraph has, and here's inflation for you, Queen to help pay for £12 million settlement. Different papers reporting different prices there. And there's also the Russian invasion of Ukraine, still very much a possibility, says Biden, which is concerning. The Independent is next with We don't want war, says Putin, but West sees no sign of a Russian retreat. And Prince Andrew agrees to settle US sex abuse case. The Guardian is next. It has Prince settles Giuffre sex assault case out of court and PM cautious on claims of Russia troop withdrawal. We turn to the Financial Times, the FT, which has Putin open to talks but prolongs invasion threat against Ukraine. And there's also tech sector alarmed at Patel push to monitor, in inverted commas, legal but harmful content. I bet the tech sector is alarmed at that. The Mirror also leading on Andrew does 12 million deal to halt sex claim, the same figure that the Telegraph was reporting. It also has a subheading of Duke settles out of court with accuser under Queen and Charles's orders. The Times is next. It leads with Biden doubts Russian withdrawal and Duke agrees to pay out to settle sex assault case. And we end with our hero, the headline writer of the Daily Star, which has Forgive me. Royal wrong'un pays out to sex victim he's never met, as you do. There we go. Those are... And so to our first story. Prince Andrew, aka Randy Andy, has settled with Virginia Roberts / Giuffre out of court. The sum is, well, 10 to 12 million pounds, who knows? And our own Prince Andrew is going to cover this one.
Oh, I'm not sure I like that comparison, but nevertheless...
What do you want, Prince Andrew or Florence Nightingale?
Florence Nightingale's better. Let's go back to Florence Nightingale. I think that's good. She never had to settle out of court for anything, as far as I'm aware. You're right to mention the figure, because all of the headlines seem to be going with different figures. I think it's because we don't know fully, so everything's a bit shrouded. People are sort of estimating. I think people are saying between 10 and 15 million dollars, I believe, is the amount that people are saying. But there is... The key thing to emphasise about this is it wasn't a criminal case. This was a civil case, so it has been settled. There's no non-disclosure element in this, and what that will mean is this won't go away for Prince Andrew, because Virginia Giuffre is perfectly within her rights to go away and write books about it, make films about it, documentaries. So this could go on. And it's interesting that one of the front covers, I think it was this...
How much do you think they would have had to pay for her total silence for an NDA?
Well, they haven't even done that.
I know. I'm just speculating how much.
Well, I don't know, but the payout here isn't just damages. There's an element which is damages, and then there's also a substantial contribution to a charity. And this is Prince Andrew, I suppose, trying to rehabilitate his image, because he specifically, the charity is for people who have been victims of sexual assault, and that's what he's doing. I think the reason why it's happening now in this way, I know he was saying he was very keen to clear his name and all the rest of it, but of course we have got the Jubilee approaching, Platinum Jubilee. We've got the ceremony about Prince Philip, the memorial ceremony next month. Getting this does sort of get it out the way and clear up the messy business. But it's not, like I say, it's not going to go away for Prince Andrew reputationally. And also, we have to remember that he retained his friendship with, what we do know, he retained his friendship with Epstein even after the revelations, even after he was prosecuted, which would suggest that he's not good at PR, is he? This is a
thing. He was threatening to represent himself in court, and I'm not surprised with that in mind, given his previous record giving interviews, that Charles and the Queen lent on him to settle now.
One would imagine they were both lent on, wouldn't you say? I mean, Virginia Giuffre as well. Nobody wants this. I mean, nobody wants this trial to happen, do they? Let's be fair. Maybe the victims do, but certainly not the royal family, and probably not the other men, and they're all men, who might be mentioned in a trial like this.
You don't think Giuffre... You said Giuffre, even Giuffre doesn't want it?
I think she might have done, but I think that if they offered her enough money, she would at least go away, as you say.
I think she'd be happy as well that there's a substantial payout to this charity. You know, that's... You know so that something positive comes of it, I suppose.
I think that's true. There were certain things that got me in this. I mean, essentially, he's paid a large amount of money to settle a case involving alleged abuse of... sexual abuse of minors, right? This is not the best moment the royal family have ever had. I think we can agree
that's
there.
A fair point.
Pretty grim what's going on. After we've talked about this, I would like never to hear about Prince Andrew again. I mean, obviously there's going to be more negative headlines. He regrets his association with Jeffrey Epstein. Oh, right, OK, well, great. What about when you were actually associating with Jeffrey Epstein and going on the Lolita Express? This whole story... Ghislaine Maxwell, I mean, all right, Epstein went to prison, but Ghislaine Maxwell's the only one who's gone to prison. All these men who are involved in this stuff, none of that's come out at all, has it, really?
I guess it will.
Well, maybe this 12 million quid is buying the silence to a certain extent.
Yeah.
We won't hear so much about it because...
I think we will. I think we're going to hear more and more about it. And also, he's going to have to earn money now, isn't he?
No, the Queen will look after him.
Do you think?
It's a favourite son. I mean, listen, putting that aside, the Queen does still love Prince Andrew and will look after him. She's not going to... What's he going to do?
I mean, it shows how long in life you go out bailing out your kids for. I just hope my kids don't go to any Jeffrey Epstein parties.
All that stuff never ends. She'll be shelling out and shelling out. And, you know, maybe there was £10 million on the Mail, £12 million on the Telegraph.
Some people estimate up to 20, you know?
They have no idea.
I must say, I don't know how they arrived at that figure, but I'm surprised, given the value to the royal family of silence, that it isn't higher. I know she hasn't signed an NDA, I take that point, but and given the value to all those other men who are involved of silence, I'm surprised that figure isn't a lot higher.
Yeah, I suppose you couldn't have gone for an NDA because that would have looked incredibly suspicious.
Oh, whereas this only looks mildly suspicious.
But mildly suspicious isn't as bad as incredibly suspicious.
Yeah, I mean, maybe there's an NDA behind the scenes that's
perhaps.
agreed.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't know all the details.
Right, let us move on with that on that mysterious cliffhanger. I'm sure we'll be returning to this story in future headliners. The next story is from The Guardian.
Do we have to?
Ian, you handled it so beautifully. Of course we're going to come back to it. And we're going to get you on specifically to talk about it. The next story is from The Guardian, and this is your favourite subject, Ian, cladding.
I did used to be an engineer.
Oh, did you?
And so I did design, not this particular cladding, I should point that out.
You're not
right
responsible,
now.
no?
No.
That's the beautiful thing about comedians. They always have past lives, and I never knew you were an engineer.
A hinterland, I think. You know what? Basically, this is in The Guardian. Developers in England to be forced to pay to fix cladding under new laws. The firms could, in effect, be blocked from the housing market if they do not fix cladding safety issues. Why has it taken them 4.5 years? I know laws take a while to frame, but it's been 4.5 years when these poor people who've lived in these high-rises after the Grenfell fire, which is how this all started, and they've been thinking they're going to get bills up to 100,000 quid and I've seen interviews on local news. It's a sort of local news story.
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
Do you want me to tell you why it's taken 4 years? 2 reasons. COVID, and the lawyers representing the building companies will have been dragging this out as long as they possibly can.
It's disgusting.
And of course it's disgusting, but that's the reasons why.
I think it's interesting as well, because there's a couple of contradictory things in the notes that we've got. The changes would put into law a commitment to protect leaseholders living in these buildings from having to pay anything for the removal of unsafe cladding, and then said that it would hugely reduce invoices. So maybe they are still in for some money. They shouldn't have to pay a penny for this.
Of course they should.
These places in good faith.
Yeah, and
there were cases about cladding, by the way.
There were cases where there were, like, one guy would only own 25% of the house in one of those joint ownership schemes, but the lease said he was responsible for 100% of the repair costs.
All of this stuff, and it's just people not being looked after. I understand the COVID excuse, but the lawyers dragging their feet on the building companies.
That's what lawyers do. It's how it works.
No, I mean, it's absolutely, it's a no-brainer for me. It's absolutely right. People's lives have been utterly devastated by this. The sort of fear of having to pay all of this money, and fair play to Michael Gove, really, who is... No, but he has been quite tenacious about this.
Never heard that.
No, but he really has been pushing at this and sort of saying, we've got to make sure that the building owners are the ones who are going to have to pay for this. That, and it's right. It's absolutely the morally right thing to do, and I think it's important that it's happened.
What is the best kind of engineer to introduce to your parents? A civil engineer.
A civil engineer, okay.
I'm pleased with that.
I wouldn't open with it.
No, you got to laugh.
Do you know, I used to live in a high-rise block, by the way.
Right.
I used to live in a high-rise block with 2 drug dealers, but I wasn't involved. I was just opening. I was answering the door. I was like an usher, I was like front of house. But I used to live in this high-rise block, and I can imagine that's tough enough, actually, without having a £100,000 bill.
Dirty money. London is awash with it, and measures were being put in place to bring some transparency, but it seems Sir Humphrey got in the way. This is from The Guardian, Ian.
Well, is it Sir Humphrey? I mean, you're essentially saying it's the civil service who got in the way.
Well, the machine.
Well, here it says number 10, this is in The Guardian, number 10 pressured me to drop anti-money laundering measures. This is Lord Fawkes. I thought it was Fawkes, but you said you don't pronounce the L.
I think the L is silent, as in Holmes.
Education.
I think it varies depending on the folks.
The L is silent, like the P in baking,
as in folks,
as my mother would say. Anyway, a former Conservative minister, Lord Fawkes, once at the heart of efforts to clamp down on money laundering in London, has revealed that during Theresa May's premiership, number 10 lent on him. Basically, he tabled amendments to introduce a public register of overseas property owners. They basically went, we'll sort it out. Don't you worry about it.
I'm just amazed to read this story, because I remember what a big deal it was in the Cameron Osborne administration, and how they were going to bring the transparency. And I thought this register of foreign ownership of UK property already existed, and it's clearly still.
No, I mean the sort of
getting the delay treatment.
The dirty money that's been going into London, and people have known about it for a long time. It's even had some ramifications recently where people are saying this is if it does kick off in Ukraine. There's going to be some
sanctions will not work
exactly
because of this.
Because there are so many oligarchs sort of with so much property sinking their money into real estate over here.
There's a lot of Russian money, unexplained Russian money in Knightsbridge.
But isn't that interesting?
There's a whole floor of Harvey Nichols where all the staff have to speak Russian, I believe.
But it's this idea that the government...
Something like that. Yeah.
but the fact that the government doesn't look forward and think, maybe we should resolve... If this is true and that Theresa May's government actually put pressure onto this guy and say, just ignore it, it'll go away. I mean, did they not think... That's what I'm asking.
Well, maybe they're actually thinking because, do you know what? We could use some of this money ourselves. I mean, we're talking
that's
about
very short term, isn't
billions and billions of pounds came into this country.
We are the money laundering capital of the world.
Is that a good...
Apart from Panama. Now, by a continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of the wealth of their citizens. While the process impoverishes many, it actually enriches some. So said John Maynard Keynes. But what saith Andrew Doyle?
Nothing like that. What I say is this is a story in the Telegraph about the cost of living crisis, and the average wage, which adjusted for inflation, has fallen by 1.2%. This is the biggest decline since 2014. And of course, this is all relating to what the experts are now warning that what's going to happen in April is that people are going to be hit with massive energy bill spikes. I mean, they're saying here 700 quid, and that's an absolutely incredible degree. And now we've got the trade unions are calling for sort of emergency pay rises so that people can cope. Labour are talking about a windfall tax to sort
price controls as well.
Right. So, but something does have to be done, because the extent of these figures, I mean, it's going to be so crippling for families to go.
Andrew, the figures are way worse. The reality is way worse than the figures suggest.
Really?
Because so many everyday things are not included in the inflation measures. The most key one being the cost of a house. And if you measure, how much house prices have gone up relative to wages, and it's constant over time. So the incremental effect is the widening of the wealth gap.
But why?
It's a terrible, terrible process, hence me using that quote.
On top of that, by the way, I mean, I know there's almost two different stories here. There's the wages and the inflation story, but there's also this energy, the cost of energy. £700 for a household. A school, public buildings, £250,000 increase in their energy bills. Where are they all going to find this money? Meanwhile, the energy companies are making, I don't know, what I read on Twitter, £85 million a day.
A hell of a lot.
Don't blame the energy companies.
Don't blame the energy companies at all?
Not for a second. The whole responsibility for this lies with monetary policy, printing money, and interest rates that don't reflect the real cost of living.
And not selling off energy companies to hedge funds who just decided not to hedge.
There's a little bit of that, but there's a little bit... But energy companies... I mean, nobody complained when the oil price went negative last year. It went negative, and so many energy companies went bust because of it. And everyone, the standard reaction is to blame companies for profiteering and exploiting reality. The bottom line cause, and this always happens when there's an inflation, the government will blame companies and hold them responsible. The responsibility lies with the central bank and monetary policy. 100%.
Well, no way, isn't the government partly responsible as well? I mean,
the Bank of England is supposed to be independent, but it isn't.
I am way out of my depth when we're talking about stuff like this. What I know is that the energy companies seem to be making large profits. People are paying enormous bills at the same time. That doesn't seem fair. There might be bigger forces at work. I'm not saying they're not, but...
There is a little bit of crony capitalism going on, and a few privileged companies who enjoy not quite a monopoly, but there's a few companies. If there was more competition in the supply of energy, then costs would be pushed down.
But it is relevant. What Ian's saying is relevant just in terms of the way this debate is going, because when people see BP and Shell making these egregious amounts of money, and then they are hit with these incredible hikes in their cost of living,
there's going to be windfall taxes, and they're going to be blaming and scapegoating. But nobody was complaining. Nobody was going, let's bail out BP when the oil price went negative. None of that went on. I'm sorry, being in the energy business is a difficult business. It involves lots of risk and lots of speculation.
You can hedge against that risk, can't you?
Well, one of the reasons is because of hedging and future pricing. That's one of the reasons why this energy crisis has happened and why we're not going to see the prices till April. I'm getting instructions that we have to move on. So I'm following the instructions. We turn to the Telegraph, Ian, where it seems that Belgium, I'm framing this argument for you, is adopting policies to discourage employers from employing people. How about loaded framing?
Well, Essentially, what they want, Belgians can ask for a 4-day week now, essentially, and ignore their bosses after work. And it's the European first. There have been other European countries that have tried there was an Icelandic scheme that was trialled between 2015 and 2019. And 85% of its population continue to work a 4-day week. Spain want to do 32 hours. This is the future. People are going to be working less, right? Because there's less work to do because of robots and what have you. And surely it's a sensible...
Keynes made the same prediction and 70 or 80 years ago, and in fact we ended up working longer hours than ever before.
Yeah, but that's because the awful capitalists were forcing us to do the jobs, right?
It's because of the rising cost of government is the reason.
As opposed to what is sensible, which is there's less work to go around. We all do a bit less and enjoy our leisure time a bit.
Well, there's actually a good reason. There's good business reasons for employers to do this, and we know that businesses that have implemented a 4-day week and have actually reported increased productivity from their staff and increased profits. It actually works. If people have more leisure time when they are at work, they work much better. They're much more focused. There's very good reasons to move to a 4-day week.
They work smart, to use the NAF terminology.
Right.
The French, I will say, the French worker is supposed to be more productive than the American worker.
Right.
For that, and
they have no holidays at all in America. They have no time,
far
right?
fewer hours.
Right.
There is an argument for that.
I've got to say, as a comedian, I haven't worked 4 days in quite a long time. So,
we're the wrong people to talk about this. Probably.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, I'm certainly not going to be talking about it in disparagement.
Not getting any gigs, Ian?
It's only evenings for a couple of hours,
We have reached the end of part 1. We're going to take a break now. Watch the ads, buy the products, help fund us, and then join us for part 2, in which we find out about the Mexican drug cartel that forces its recruits to eat its enemy body parts. Gore on GB News. See you in a moment.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome to part 2 of Headliners. I'm Dominic Frisby, and with me looking through the papers are the professionals, Stoney and Doyle. If only that was Bodie and Doyle. If only your name was Bodie, Ian, but Stoney and Doyle. Do you know who Bodie and Doyle are?
I'm afraid I don't.
That was the great, you know the professionals, do you, Bodie and Doyle?
One of the most ridiculous programmes ever broadcast.
Oh, really? Okay.
And
I'll
Bodie
check
and
it
Doyle,
out.
you would be Ian Collins and you would be Martin Shaw.
Well, I'll have a look on YouTube and then see if it's flattering or not.
What's his name? Lewis Collins.
Yes. Okay.
Ian Collins is on the rival channel. Right, The Guardian is next, and the president of Honduras, once the darling of Washington, is to be extradited to the US on drug charges, Andrew.
Yes, so less than 3 weeks after leaving office, and now the US are asking him to be extradited. Apparently what he was doing is he was accused, I should say accused because he denies it, but Hernandez was accused of shielding drug lords in return for bribes and effectively trying to flood the US streets with drugs. And his defence is quite interesting because Hernandez is saying that there was a constitutional reform which allows Hondurans to be extradited to the US. That was back in 2012 when he was president of Congress. And he says, well, that's evidence of my innocence because I wouldn't have passed this measure to allow people to be extradited to the US if I knew it was going to fall back on me. I don't know how convincing that is, but
yeah, it's a reasonable argument, but I'm more interested to see how you pronounce the name of the capital of Honduras. Do it?
No, go for it.
Oh, it's on the thing. Tegucigalpa.
I wasn't going to attempt it.
Tegucigalpa, but yeah, OK.
Tegucigalpa. Anyway, Ian, have you got any thoughts?
You like your tests, don't you?
Well, it's a funny name. I've been there, so anyway.
I don't know whether he's guilty or innocent. I have no idea. His brother was convicted of drug trafficking conspiracy and related weapons charges, but maybe he's a black sheep of the family or something. I don't know. I do wonder whether America should ever get involved in Central or South America, the US, because it doesn't tend to go well, does it?
Its track record isn't good, but it's good to have Central American banana republics back in the news. It's been a few years.
I'm sure that nobody comes out of this particularly well. I mean, the United States is where all those drugs are consumed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of stuff going on, and we're going to talk about that.
I think quite a few of them are consumed on site as well.
You think?
Yeah.
I have no idea, but I guess
having been there myself.
Right.
The witness statement is this. But anyway, we stay in Central America for our next story, which is in the Star. So there is a reasonable chance of exaggeration, but it seems Mexican drug cartels are taking brutality to a whole new level.
Yeah, the Daily Star. Evil Mexican drug cartels forces recruits to eat enemies' body parts in sick cannibal ritual. It's nice they've added evil and sick there, in case we just thought it was all very nice. A Mexican drug cartel, I love this stuff, is forcing
Victims furious.
Exactly, yeah. It's forcing its newest members, right, because I think what they're doing, they're just making it more difficult to join now.
It's like
because the old members, they just had to drink slightly off milk, right?
Oh, I see.
And they got in. That was fine. Now it's cannibalism, apparently, and it's a method of intimidation. There are a couple of things. Basically,
there's a video, though, on the website of them doing it.
Listen, of course it's grim, but if you'd seen Narcos Mexico, which I have, you would know these things are all grim. It was absolutely horrible. But basically, they don't have to do this until 3 or 4 months in. And if they pass the test, they're given approval to move on to bigger body parts as well. So they start with fingers, I guess, and toes, and then maybe I couldn't handle a
thigh.
leg.
Surely the thigh is the most.
You know,
have you ever eaten any enemy body parts?
No, I haven't. And I do. The more I learn about these cartels, the less I want to be involved. Because they seem quite... I mean, I've been watching Ozark, and I watched that Breaking Bad episode where they put a man's head on a tortoise. It just seems very... It's savage, you know, it's outrageous.
It's important to separate fact from fiction.
But this is real. This is actually
real,
happening.
Ozark and... Anyway,
right,
the evil... Staying with evil genius, the evil genius military spyware Pegasus has made several appearances on headliners in recent weeks, and it is back, as The Guardian reports that the EU wants it banned, Andrew.
Well, so they should. I find it really astonishing that more people aren't talking about this and more people aren't terrified by this. So this technology developed in Israel, surveillance technology, spyware. It's called Pegasus. The FBI, and I was worried, we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, but it was found out that the FBI got hold of this software, and they were saying they got hold of it simply to sort of keep abreast of the developing technology. I mean, it can do, right, so it can get into your phone, it can access your camera, it can film things without you knowing it can access your messages, it can send messages from your phone without you knowing it, it basically controls your life. It's so...
you can implicate people in a terrible way if you can control that.
It's so open to exploitation, it's unbelievable. And various sort of agencies have got this technology, have been using it against journalists, activists, politicians. It has been used in certain countries. That's been revealed by The Guardian. So it's absolutely right that the EU should be cracking down on this. But this stuff is really terrible. I don't trust Alexa, let alone this stuff. I don't like the fact these things listen to you.
Ian, how does one invest?
No, I've got to be honest. I'm amazed as well that more people don't talk about this.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess they do talk about it, and people are listening to them talk about it, perhaps.
Perhaps.
I mean, but hasn't this stuff been going on anyway? You know, when you have a little chat in your house about, I think I'll buy a new jacket, and then Facebook will suggest a jacket, and you go, how did that happen? Are they not listening to us anyway? It's about how much we care about whether they're listening.
I set up an entire company, of which I was CEO for a bit, listed in the stock market in Canada, specifically to invest in privacy technology, to devise technologies that defend against precisely this kind of stuff. And you'd be amazed at what a difficult sell it was, because people would say they want privacy, but then when it comes to what they actually do, they use Gmail, they have an Alexa, they have a thing, and they leave them.
You know what it is?
They have one password, which is password, and they do not protect.
People like convenience. So, you know, with Alexa, you've basically got a spy in your house. But look, you get your shopping really quickly. I guess that's what it is.
But people, I mean, there is a general perception, isn't there? I used to do a joke, I still do a joke, about how when people were burning down 5G masts last year, you know, personally, I need all the Gs you've got, right? But people say, oh no, but the Chinese are listening to our phone calls. And I thought, well, most of my phone calls just order in Chinese, right? So I'm fine with that. But there is a general perception that this sort of stuff goes on. I have no idea whether it does.
100% it does. And when the internet is free, you are the product. So the saying goes. The Novak's Djokovic saga looks set to continue into the French Open and then Wimbledon, Ian. This is from the Mail.
Yeah, he did a 9-minute interview on the BBC with Amol Rajan, talking about the fact that he will not get the vaccination. But also saying at the same time that he's not an anti-vaxxer. I think I don't mind, to be honest, with Novak Djokovic. If he doesn't want to get the vaccine, that is entirely up to him. It's his body. And I don't think we're going to see Novak Djokovic in an ICU anytime soon. But what he discounts is the weight that his voice carries. You know, in Serbia, they have one of the lowest uptakes of vaccines in Europe. That must be partially to do with the fact that their superstar tennis player has basically been talking about...
I think it's the other way around, actually. I think it's the Serbian attitude to vaccines has been cynical from the word go, and Djokovic is the Serbian attitude is spread into Djokovic.
Well, maybe it's you know what? You might be right. Maybe it's a bit of both. He's gone for this big time because he said he's willing to sacrifice his place in the French Open and Wimbledon, and not because he's only one off being the best tennis player of all time, but he's prepared to sacrifice that.
Well, I think he's 2 off now because he's got... Oh, no.
No, he's one. No, he's
Nadal's
one.
equal.
Nadal's got one more than him at the moment.
So he's 2 off.
Yeah.
So he's got to equal Nadal and then...
Yeah.
I wonder whether the experience in Australia has made him determined to go down this road. Because,
I'm sure it has.
Like, I do kind of think, like, with that, he was... Because it had been approved, hadn't it? And then it all changed. And, you know, in a sense... it was their doing, it was the government's doing that made him this martyr figure about this.
I think to be a superstar sportsman, you have to have an incredibly stubborn streak. And this will have ignited his stubborn streak.
But the only thing I would say is if anyone is entitled to talk about what they put in their body and with that sort of I'm pure, it is Novak Djokovic, isn't it? I mean, this is a guy who has a cup of warm water in the morning with a bit of lemon juice. I mean, he has regulated what he eats over the last 15 years. So if he doesn't want to put the vaccine in, that's his business.
The first sportsman to be banned for not taking the drug. Another story from the reliable Star next. When the motherland is at risk of invasion, who better to save us than our grandmother, Andrew?
Yes, this is a 79-year-old, I'm going to attempt it, Valentina Konstantinovska.
Well done.
Not so bad. And she's a pensioner, and she's vowed to defend her family if Russian forces are to invade Ukraine. She's been receiving training from special forces. She's been training with an AK-47 assault rifle, which she does say is a bit too heavy for her. But she's become this sort of heroine figure, sort of Supergran. I don't know if you remember Supergran, but it was a popular children's TV thing when I was growing up. And she's basically that kind of figure now. She's like a warrior grandmother figure. And you know, people are
warrior granny.
You know,
that's what the next one's called.
What a ridiculous story. forces. I mean, the woman's 70. If anyone can beat back Russian special forces, it's a 79-year-old now.
Yeah, but I guess the point is, if even she's prepared to take up arms, maybe that sends a message that...
Do you know what? They're in trouble in Ukraine, right? If Russia do invade, they've got a lot of people who are prepared to take up arms. Some of them, I guess, there might even be older ones. But they're going to get wiped out.
That would be effective. Who would shoot at a grandmother? You wouldn't do it, would you?
Who would shoot at a grandmother with an AK-47?
No.
I think
you clearly haven't fought the ruthless Russians, Andrew. Part 2 is coming to an end. The weather is next, then some ads. Watch them buy their products, and then join us for Part 3, when we will find out why the Malaysian Minister for Women and Family, who is a woman herself, is advising husbands to strike their wives gently if they ignore advice. See you in a minute.
Hello, I'm Alex Deakin with your latest weather update from the Met Office. Stormy conditions on the way through the rest of this week. We have an amber weather warning in place through Wednesday across parts of northern Britain because of Storm Dudley. Ahead of that, this evening, another area of low pressure will bring wet and increasingly windy conditions. But here comes Storm Dudley behind that through Wednesday afternoon and evening across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland and northern England. That's where the strongest winds are likely to be. But back to Tuesday evening, wet weather spreading across most areas, some snowfall over the hills across Scotland, staying pretty cold here as well. But elsewhere, temperature dropping this evening well down into single figures, but numbers by dawn, look at that, 9 in Hull, 11 in Cardiff, double digits across the south to start Wednesday. So it's not a cold start, and for much of the Midlands, eastern England, we'll see sunny spells through the morning, but it's going to be windy and it turns very wet very quickly across Northern Ireland. Heavy rain moves into southern Scotland and northern England to parts of North Wales. Most places turning pretty soggy by the end of Wednesday, and it will be blustery. But it will also be mild. Temperatures 10 to 15 maybe across the southeast, a little colder in the far north of Scotland. Now in the far north, the winds may well stay light, but elsewhere blustery conditions. And we have warnings in place. Amber warning covering southern Scotland, Northern Ireland and parts of northern England. Gusts of 60, 70 miles an hour. A yellow warning extending further south into Wales, the Midlands and East Anglia. Travel disruption, likelihood of damage to trees. Power interruptions also possible, particularly in that amber area. So a blustery Wednesday evening as that storm system moves through, the winds steadily easing through the night so that by Thursday, Dudley's out the way. It'll still be a blustery day with sunshine and showers. But here comes the next storm. This is Storm Eunice arriving on Friday. Still some uncertainty about the track and location, but some strong wind from that storm more likely across the southern half of the UK.
GB News is the UK's home of discussion and debate
from all perspectives.
To stay up to date on the latest stories,
make sure that you subscribe to the GB News channel
right here on YouTube.
You can watch us live 24/7 across the whole world.
You can also check out exclusive content and catch up on previous episodes of your favourite shows.
Every day, we ask the questions
that you'd ask, so why not add your voice to the conversation in the comments section?
Don't forget to subscribe. We are GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
Basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon
and Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to part 3 of Headliners. I'm Dominic Frisby. Stoney and Doyle are with me, and we fight fire with fire, a reference that only the keener fans of 1980s cop dramas will get. The Times is next, and the Royal Mail Horizon IT inquiry continues. The biggest miscarriage of justice in British legal history. What is so extraordinary about this story is that the Post Office knew their IT wasn't fit for purpose and still went ahead with prosecutions, Ian. I find that incredible.
The police told this guy that I was reading about, they told him that they said there was no case to answer for, and the Post Office still went for him as well. There are 844 prosecutions, 705 criminal convictions, all with this IT system that didn't work.
Is this some terrible mental bias or something, some kind of confirmation bias that took over the head honchos, or what is it?
Do you know, I actually have no idea why they behaved the way they did, and they ruined people's lives. 33 people have died waiting for justice. 3 out of 5 have not had any money at all. This one guy said this feeble apology. The head of the Post Office wrote to him and said, please feel free to contact me, but there are no contact details. I mean, the callousness is off the scale.
It's awful, and we talked about this other thing taking 4.5 years. I mean, this has taken 20.
Yeah, but it's the same attitude, isn't it, of people, of your high-ups, or whatever you want to call them.
It's lawyers, big institutions, big public bodies.
But I still don't understand why they behave the way they did. I genuinely can't get my head around it.
I think they talk about those kind of mental biases that infect large organisations, and I can't believe they're that callous. I think it must be some kind of mass delusion, but I don't know if you've got anything.
I have no idea why. I mean, is it just a reluctance to admit that you made a mistake that is so catastrophic? Because, you know, people, as Ian says, people's lives have been actually ruined.
Yeah, you're in the hole, keep digging kind of thing.
I guess. I mean, is that just human nature? I don't know.
I wish there was a way I could never use the Post Office again. But, you know, sorry, Mum, the Christmas cards didn't come.
Our next story is from The Times, and guidance on how to strike your wife from the Malaysian Minister for Women and Family, who is a woman. I mean, talk about not reading the room, but...
Well, that's right. You would have thought that's part of her job description. She would be quite pro-woman. And her name is Siti Zaila Maud Yusof. She's Deputy Minister for Women and Family.
You get 10 out of 10 for that.
Yeah, well, I always attempt to pronounce the names I'm not familiar with, and I hope I did a good job there. Could have mispronounced it, I don't know. But she's basically said that if women are non-compliant with their husbands, she put out this Instagram video sort of suggesting that maybe, firstly, don't sleep with the wife, and then ultimately, if the women are still non-compliant, then just gently beat them. Now, look, we've got to remember, however, that she's part of a very conservative Islamic party. Malaysia, the official religion of Malaysia is Islam. She's called for female flight attendants to wear uniforms that are Sharia compliant. It shouldn't be that surprising to us that in a theocratic country you have these religious laws coming in, and that's just the way, I'm surprised it's considered a controversy over there.
It probably isn't.
No, probably not.
Have you been practising these methods at home, Ian? What?
My undisciplined partner, I mean, there's guidance here. Speak to your husbands when they are calm, finished eating, have prayed and are relaxed. I mean, there's a little small window, I believe, when he's full, he's had a pray, he's done whatever. Is this what this is about? Is this an Islamic religious thing in the main?
I think it's just an article exploiting the cultural differences.
It is the cultural.
It sounds ridiculous, though, doesn't it? And it sounds, and you're going, you're the Deputy Minister for Women. I mean, what's the Minister for Women like? It's spouting nonsense like this. You do worry about Malaysia. It's a woman saying it as well. What?
I think you'll enjoy telling us this next story, Ian, which is from The Times. It suggests that Donald Trump's finances may be less reputable than once believed.
Essentially, the headline is Donald Trump's long-serving accountants cut ties, saying financial statements are unreliable. And all I've written here is, who'd have thunk it? Because we knew what he was like. We know what he's like. I'm amazed that people still want to be associated with him in any way. I mean, he must be paying them a huge amounts of money. And finally, they've gone, actually, it's too much now. Yeah. Finally. And I'm shocked it's taken anyone this long.
I guess they must have been scared either reputationally or perhaps even they could risk being struck off. I don't know.
Well, also, if he's going to be president again in 2024, then, a lot of people will stick with him, won't
Why
they?
did you even look at me when you said like that? I think that would be a disaster if that was the case. But even if he will be president, he's going to need a new accountant.
Having already frozen the $10 million donated to the truckers via GoFundMe, the once Liberal Canadian government is proposing to go even further. Andrew,
I cannot believe the extent of this. This is just outright authoritarianism now. So Justin Trudeau's, he's obviously panicking about the Canada trucker protest. He's now saying he's going to introduce emergency powers in order to freeze their personal assets, their bank accounts, this kind of thing. What has been really look, I believe in peaceful protest, no matter what the cause, whether I support the cause or not the cause. It doesn't matter. I think it's so fundamental to a democracy, and there has been a real propaganda war against what's going on with these truckers here. People talking about how they're all fascists and Islamophobes and homophobes, and when you actually watch all the footage, it's not that at all. I mean, there just isn't. People
freedom
talk about
is now a far-right term.
Did you see that article? Some people saying that the word freedom, we should be mistrustful because it's associated with the far right. What are you talking about? There's always going to be a few with a mass protest of this kind. There's always going to be a few
freedom fighter Mussolini.
There's always going to be some bad apples within any big protest, right? But if you're just going to smear an entire group of people, I think what a lot of this is it's working class people, and they're not doing what they're told, and the authorities aren't happy about it.
Any thoughts on this?
Is it not more likely that people who are unvaccinated will bring in coronavirus into Canada? The truckers is what I'm just asking the general question.
Well, sure, but 90% of these truckers were vaccinated voluntarily. It's not the case that this is an anti-vax protest.
They've been framed as anti.
It's been misrepresented.
Some slightly more extreme groups sort of clung on to the edges of this protest.
They always do. They do it with left-wing protests, right-wing protests. They always do.
What I find interesting about this, really, is that 72% of poll respondents said the truckers should go home. So there seems to be, in Canada, a general feeling that they like what Trudeau's doing. I'm not saying I agree with it.
Not on my Twitter feed, they don't.
Not on your Twitter feed. I'm not talking about Twitter feed, by the way.
It's easy for me to say who conducted the poll, what results did they want from the poll.
I absolutely agree, and there are all sorts of questions, but there's a surprising number of people.
I think they're pretty popular.
Sure, no, I agree. It's not that surprising to me. There's a real appetite for authoritarianism from people in Canada. Justin Trudeau and his government are very much the definition of nanny state, and you're right, people like it. People like it over there, and they want fewer freedoms, and they want more restrictions on freedom of speech, and I just think it's crazy.
Yeah, this story is a difficult one for your liberal correspondent. I'll be honest with you.
I think the most interesting thing about that story is that the government has the ability to freeze your bank account.
Yeah.
And that is a terrifying thought, because it basically gives the government total power over you. And this is why we have Bitcoin. Right, The Guardian is
he had to get it in.
And Friends in China. Friends in China has had its gay storylines removed, Ian.
I've never watched Friends. I'll be honest with you. I've never actually watched
it.
I know it is. I've seen bits of it, and it looks charming, and it's very, very funny and everything. But I don't like this story. This is censorship, isn't it? Essentially, we were having a discussion beforehand about this stuff from the other point of view. There's certain things that I hear people say that I think I don't like the sound of that. But in the end, freedom of speech is freedom of speech.
They're rerunning the film Convoy about the truckers. They're running it in Canada with all the truckers removed.
Yes, exactly.
You know the film Convoy.
I know the film Convoy. It's a ridiculous film. Anyway, they've removed the Chinese authorities. Is it the Chinese? The Chinese fans of these sitcom claim that the authorities have removed gay storylines. There was apparently a story where Ross explained that his ex-wife Carol is gay, and that was cut. And there were also mistranslations of lines by LGBTQI characters. This stuff goes on here as well, can I just say. I watched The Man with the Golden Gun. Have you seen that film?
A long time ago, yeah.
Yes. Scaramanga, the villain, has 3 nipples, right? That is the defining characteristic. It was shown on a Sunday afternoon, and they cut the word nipples because they thought that young kids...
Is that offensive?
They were arguing to edit Fawlty Towers.
They have done. Yes. On the BBC iPlayer, there are certain scenes that have been removed.
You're kidding?
If you watch it right now.
I thought they'd been put back.
No, they haven't. I watched it recently. The Germans has a scene, because of racial epithets within the scene.
The Major uses the racial epithet. Yeah, but
that line of the Major's.
Yes, but of course, the joke is on the Major. Right? It's not a racist.
You know what? In general, I would agree with you on that. this just... It's censorship, but you know what? It's not the first time the Chinese would censor. I mean, Google, you can't find Tiananmen Square, can you?
You know, the Chinese government recently changed...
You can't find Google. I don't think Google's allowed in China.
Well, they have Weibo or whatever. They have the Chinese equivalent.
Well, they changed the ending of Fight Club when they screened that recently in China so that the authorities win. And they just put up a message, you know, at the end when the rebels win, they just put a message in at the end saying, and all these people were arrested.
They should change the Lord of the Rings and they just catch the ring just before it lands.
I have no idea what
Sauron wins. That's the Western origin story, Ian. The Mail is the Lord of the Rings. The Mail is next with a story about Roblox, an online game for children. Or so we thought, Andrew.
I haven't heard of this before, and it's an odd one because this is apparently it's like the Metaverse for children. This thing called Roblox, where you can create anything within it, any kind of world. You can be where you have avatars, you know what I mean, and you can be whatever you want within the world. And what's happening apparently is adults are going into the game and creating sort of parties with strippers and bondage and things like this, and it feels creepy as hell, actually. So, I mean,
I've got some pictures up that we can look at, and there is somebody in the metaverse of this world.
I suppose anything like this is bound to be open to exploitation by unsavoury types, you know, because apparently this is aimed at 9-year-olds, between 9 and 12-year-olds.
What sort of people are doing this? I mean, it's like
it might just be hackers. It sort of is, but it might be hackers. It might be like a 19-year-old hacker who thinks it's funny, or a 14-year-old hacker or something who thinks it's funny.
Well, it just goes to show that you have to be, if you've got kids, you've got to keep an eye on what they're looking at online. Right?
You're enjoying your game with the Nazi bondage strippers. I mean, it's unfortunate, isn't it, really, that you have to...
I agree, it's pretty sick, but it's really hard to...
No, I understand it's hard for parents to... I do get that.
Half the time your kids know all the machines.
Of course they do. No, I do understand that.
The next story is from the Metro. It's a scenario from the airplane dramas of the 1980s. A passenger tried to open a plane mid-flight, a plane door mid-flight, Ian.
Tried to get into the cockpit, break into the cockpit. He was drunk, apparently, and their flight attendant hit him with a coffee pot to stop him opening the plane door. I mean, I heard that my missus mentioned this to me yesterday and said that he got jail for this, like 8 years or something, because it could have killed hundreds or thousands of people if they're over a city. So
what was he doing though? Why was he trying to get in the cockpit?
Well, because he was very, very drunk.
And I could drive this better.
I guess that's what happened. Pictures and videos have emerged showing the man being held down, and FBI investigators speaking to fellow passengers, and they've interviewed a few fellow passengers. I mean, you pray. I've been on a flight where someone's kicked off a little bit and he was strapped to a seat. And all of us could not have been gladder, because at one point he was standing up...
Who strapped him to the seat?
The stewards and the stewardesses, about 4 or 6 of them, because he was standing by the door. And you're thinking, if you go for that door, I'm going to jump on you at this point.
Yeah.
But it was frightening, I'll be honest.
I guess that's the only thing they can do. It's a case for tying people up.
It just goes to show, though, that these flight attendants, they do have training, don't they, to restrain. I mean, this guy grabbed a coffee pot. That's what reminds me of the old Jackie Chan films, where he'd use any object that was around him in a fight. You know, I mean, it's pretty impressive stuff.
And so finally, we have The Star, and teachers should drop sir and miss for gender-neutral language, Ian. The Star's spinning a bit of a story here, isn't it?
To be honest, this is Andrew's story.
Well, I mean, it's not. They're not making it up. I mean, this is a leaked lecture. It's called "Getting the Language Right for 2022," and this is advice for UK teachers. And they're saying that, you know, like where kids will say,
but it's just a lecture. The Star's making out that it's on the cards.
But it's not that far away and stuff. Okay. There are activist groups that are going into schools, and they're suggesting changes to the curriculum, but also in terms of the modes of address. And so it's not a million miles away. And, you know, kids say please sir, please miss, and that they should just say teacher. Teacher, it sounds quite rude to me though. Oi, teacher, you know. But I think it's a kind of mania. There's a real mania about gender in particular, and this, you know, and particularly when it comes to kids, and the idea that everything should be gender neutral. But, you know, kids don't think in this way. Kids don't know about gender identity ideology. They don't care about stuff like this.
From a really, I mean, it's even like when they're little babies. The boys can be really boyish and the girls are really girly. You've procreated. You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do know what you're talking about, having procreated. Do I have to have an opinion on this?
No, of course.
I genuinely, because sometimes my son...
Yes, and a strong one.
No, yeah, my son and myself sometimes have these discussions, and I say stuff and he goes, oh yeah, I see what you're saying. And then he says stuff and I go, oh, I see what you're saying as well. So I think this could be argued both ways. I don't know whether the Daily Star are making more of a thing of this than it is. I know this debate is going on, but I prefer not to take part in it, if I'm honest.
Well, I know, I get why. Because people get very angry about it online.
But I don't know what I think, to be honest with you,
Right.
because I hear it from both sides and it sounds rational.
Well, I suppose there is a kind of thing about gender at the moment where people are threatened by the idea of the difference between the sexes. But it's a biological fact. You know, there's a lot of schools are moving to sort of gender-neutral uniforms and that kind of thing, so...
On that note, that is all we have time for. Thank you to my guests, Ian Stone and Andrew Doyle. It's been a pleasure. Thank you to you for watching. I'll be back with more headliners at the same time tomorrow. Until then, I would say cheerio, but I've got about 10 seconds to kill. I've timed
Why don't we talk about that
programme really
gender-neutral
badly.
again?
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mrs. On that note, thank you very much, everyone, and cheerio.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for...
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.